It really doesn't make any difference. I mean, we don't pay any attention to what people say about Coca-Cola stock or Gillette stock or any of those things. I mean, on any given day, 2 million shares of Coca-Cola may trade. That's a lot of people selling, a lot of people buying it. If you talk to one person, you'd hear one thing, and talk to another. You really should not make decisions in securities based on what other people think. If you're doing that, you should think about doing something else, because a public opinion poll will not get you rich in Wall Street. So you really want to stick with businesses that you feel you can somehow evaluate yourself. And Charlie and I, we don't read anything about what the economy is going to do, or the market's going to do, or what anytime I see some article that says, these analysts say this or that about some business, it doesn't mean anything to us. You cannot get rich with a weather vane.
And I would say this in terms of predictions, and I know the spirit in which you asked the question, but there's a market out there all the time, and people love to hear predictions. I mean, if I said I was going to offer a bunch of predictions today, I mean, we would have 1 million people here. I mean, they're dying to have predictions, and speeches at Rotary clubs or trade associations or whatever. They just plain love it, and that's what a whole industry is built upon. The people coming out of Washington that talk about political predictions, and I don't read those in the paper at all, because it's space fillers basically. And you mentioned Edgar Casey. Ben Graham knew Edgar Casey pretty well, but I just have never seen any utility to any of that at all. There will be some huge surprises in the world. There's no question about that. But I don't think that betting on any specific one is a very smart policy. In fact, we usually bet against them in terms of super catastrophes. We know there will be a 7.0 or greater quake in California in the next 50 years. We don't know where it'll be or when it'll be or anything like that. We're willing to pay out a lot of money if it happens tomorrow. And because people do worry about catastrophes, and in this case it's perfectly proper with insured values, but it just isn't any way, in our view, to get through economic life. Charlie?
All of these economists with 160 IQs that spend their life studying it, can you name me one super wealthy economist that's ever made money out of securities? Just go down the list. No, Keynes actually, in his early years, tried to make money in stocks by predicting what business would do, and he gave it up. And then he went over to a Graham-type approach. I mean, it's very interesting to read his history on this, because he thought he could, by looking at various economic variables, pick what he called the credit cycle and make a lot of money, and he went broke a couple times in doing it, had to borrow from people. And then he settled on buying good businesses cheap that he understood and concentrating his investments, and he did very well. It's an interesting history. But if you look at the whole history of them, they don't make a lot of money buying and selling stocks, but people who buy and sell stocks listen to them, which is, I have a little trouble with that.
I've not earned any stars for my past economic predictions, and the good thing about my economic predictions, if I even do make them, is that I pay no attention to them myself. So I really, and the way we pick our investments is we just don't get into the macro factors. I can't recall a time when Charlie and I have looked at a business, either buying it in its entirety or buying pieces of it for the stock market. Macro conclusions are just never enter into the discussion. I mean, I'll pick up the phone. We've had these two in recent months, and I'll tell Charlie about it. And we talk about a few things, but we don't talk about anything remotely macro, and that's really the way it'll stay. I've seen a lot of bank mergers recently, and one of the things they do, because they want to cut the costs and justify a merger, which they're dying to do. I mean, that's the reason they cut costs they wouldn't have cut if they weren't dying to do the merger in the first place and get bigger. But frequently, I know one in particular that I'm thinking of, that they'll cut out the economics department. I always wonder why the hell they had it in the first place. Because what do they do? I mean, The guy comes in, I says, I think GDP will be 4.6 this year instead of 4.3. So what? You know, I mean, you're still trying to make every good loan you can make, and you're still trying to take in deposits as cheap. You should be trying to cut costs wherever you can. It's got nothing to do with running the business. But you know, it's fashionable. And every bank had its economist and economics department, and when a big client would come in, they take them to lunch, and it always has struck me as it's just a lot of nonsense. You know, so if we ever get a economics department at Berkshire, sell the stock short.